Well, hello there, friends, lovers. Thank you for joining us. This is 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir. And yes, a special edition with special guest Mark Pellegrino. Mark, how are you doing on this fine evening?
I'm pretty good so far, thank you.
Well, thank you for joining us. Again, special edition, normally Sunday nights, 6 p.m. Special occasion here. Today is Wednesday, November 29th, 2023, the 333rd day of 2023. Your best year yet. If it's not your best year yet, you've got 20, damn. Boy's not used to broadcasting on Wednesdays. You've got 32 days left.
32 days, okay.
32 days left to make that so. Yeah, 26 days until Christmas. And I hope you all have got your Christmas shopping done, or at least you're starting to feel it. Mark, are you starting to feel the Christmas mood?
Not feeling the Christmas mood, but definitely feeling the Christmas pressure. I got to get out there and start shopping pretty soon. Otherwise, I'm in trouble.
You know, it's hard enough as it is. What did we do before the internet? Jeez Louise.
Yeah, that makes things a lot easier, for sure.
Yes.
I always say I'm going to get all my Christmas shopping done early, and I always end up still shopping on the 21st, 22nd, 23rd, you know.
Well, I can tell you the first time you do it all early, you do it all on time, you're like, yeah, this was easy. And then doing it again the year after that, you're like, man, it was so easy, and now it's like harder than hell. So it's an aspiration. It doesn't get any easier as we go. I'm going to leave out the usual on this date in history because, well, we've got Mark here, and also a few of them were downers. You know, it's the day that Natalie Wood passed away, some strange mysteries and whatnot. So we're going to leave that out. We'll save that for Sunday like we usually do. Now, folks, assuming you're watching live, I want to see you in the chat. I want to see your comments. I want to see your questions. I want to see the fanboys and girls out there fawning, and the critics, you can bring it on too. So, yes, we do want to hear from you. And, yeah, Christopher Smith, we are booking guests. Who's your booking agent? Yeah, the booking agent. I've got a really hot booking agent. She takes care of everything. Man, we're on the socials in our real names. Reach out to us, Christopher Smith, if you've got something in mind. I know he's a guitar player. It may well be. Self-interest on his mind. We'll talk a little bit about self-interest. But Mark, I will do a quick introduction, but everybody already knows who you are. That's why they're here. That's why they're listening. Actor, a fine gentleman, a fine activist. We have the opportunity to work together on the Ayn Rand Centre-UK on a regular basis. And you have been loud and proud on there, which is interesting because successful actor. You know, Amy has worked with a publicist in Hollywood who let her in on who some of the closet objectivists,
Well,
the closet Ayn Rand fans are out there.
Years and years
Yeah, this was a
ago.
few years back.
Yeah.
But yeah, there are people who are Ayn Rand fans and don't want it known. You know, fortunately, we have, for better or for worse, you know, Brad Pitt, Angelina Jolie, people who have said they admire Ayn Rand or at least her works. But yeah, a lot of people
there was Sandra Bullock was another rumor. And,
a lot of people are in the closet there.
But they're not in the closet now. Are they supposed to remain closeted, or has this been sort of out of the closet?
I think it's been out of the closet.
It was actually privileged information, but it was probably 10 years ago now since you did that work. Anyway, the point is you are loud and proud. You are out there, not just on the Ayn Rand Centre UK channel, but your own project, The Reality Check.
A beautiful name, by the way.
Yeah, well.
Thank you.
Well, since I let my newsletter go 15, 20 years ago, I suppose it was available.
15, more like 25 years ago.
Well, it was before we were married, wasn't it?
Yes.
Ancient history. Speaking of ancient history, I want to know, how did you get into acting? Because I heard your interview with Michael Leibowitz, and you made a great point during that interview, which is people will ask you, how do I get into acting? And they're looking for a magic pill. They're looking for it to happen overnight. How do I get found? How do I become successful? Well, Mark, how did you get into acting? What was your journey there?
Yeah, when people ask me questions like in class, they want the magic pill for success. So what do you do to be successful? And they don't like the answer, which is you just have to work really hard, and eventually the opportunity will sort of come in line with your work ethic, and you'll find a project that works for you. But I would say I got into acting by pure luck, because I was in college. I did very well in college, but wasn't very interested in the schoolwork, after I fell in love with this crazy girl, I dropped out of college.
It's a story about a girl, huh?
Yeah, a story about a girl, crazy girl, not just any girl, crazy girl. But after that ended, thank God, without too many casualties, yeah, I had to do something. I was working at a gas station, singing in a band a little bit, but none of that is really something to hang your hat on for your future. I think I saw an advertisement Christmas shopping one day for a place called John Robert Powers, which was a modeling school, quote unquote. Yes, they apparently teach you how to model. But they were offering a bunch of free stuff, so I went for the free stuff. One of the free things they were offering was a commercial workshop class, and the commercial workshop teacher was an old soap opera actor by the name of Bob Hover. For some ungodly reason, he thought I had talent. I don't know what he saw in me, to be honest with you, because anytime I did something right, I didn't know why I did it right, and when it was wrong, I didn't know why it was wrong. I had no barometer for judging my work. And I had no interest in acting previous to that, so I had no barometer with respect to other actors' work. You know, it wasn't something that fascinated me. So he introduced me to an agent. That agent introduced me to a theater school that eventually changed my life, because it was also through that theater school that I met an actor who introduced me to Ayn Rand.
That's a beautiful story. I mean, if it leads to Ayn Rand, then it's
serendipity.
Great story.
Yeah.
That's great. So the reason why there was something mentioned on Wikipedia that you got all A's or something in college, and then you dropped out. So the question was, so the answer was it was a girl. Okay.
The answer was it was a girl, and the way freshman orientation went, you got to the front of a 35,000 person long line, and you got to register for all of your classes right off the bat for the first, I think, semester or two. And then after that, you went to the back of the line, and none of the classes I couldn't get any of the classes I wanted. I think the only class I could get was a nighttime French class, which did not interest me at the time, for only 5 units. And when it was the nighttime French class versus crazy girl who's full of weirdness and interest and mystery.
Yeah.
I went for that. You know what? I was only 19, so what did I know? And she took me on the ride of my life, and left me with a little hole, to be honest with you, a little space in there where that part of my academic career was never fulfilled, but I feel like I should fulfill it, right? Like my last year in history class, I got the Bank of America award for like the best history student on the West Coast.
Excellent.
So, but at the time, in college, I wanted to be a marine biologist, and I thought about psychology, something in the sciences. I loved history, but I wasn't thinking about it as a career. Now I think I'd like to go back and get a degree in history, but academia is so corrupt. I think I'd be left challenging my professors through every class and probably be failed.
Yeah, history would be a tough one.
Yeah.
If you were interested in engineering, computer science, you might get away with that. Humanities, that's a tough nut to crack these days, if you're still thinking rationally.
If you want to present history in a rational way, what you do is you find a good museum and you become a docent or a presenter there, when you're retired and you don't need a lot of money.
Because they don't get paid much.
And then that's actually something that I did. I was a presenter at the Henry Ford Museum in Greenfield Village, and I was able to talk about American history and the ideas and the way people actually lived. It was fantastic.
Oh, that sounds fun.
Yeah.
A couple questions rolling in, and I think you can knock these out real quick. Herb wants to know, I've never seen the show Supernatural. Why should I watch it? And how should I approach it as an objectivist? That's an interesting question, because fantasy, science fiction, obviously thrillers, objectivists love these materials, but some people come in and think, well, if there's a supernatural element, not that the show is called Supernatural, should I be watching that? I don't know. What do you think, Mark?
Yes, you absolutely should, because it's it's one of the few heroic television shows out there. And as objectivists, we know what that means, right? People pursuing values, willfully pursuing values, standing in the face of evil and defeating it. That's what the boys do. The boys being the Winchesters, Sam and Dean Winchester. They they pursue values. They're loyal to one another, and they even defy God and the devil himself. So you should watch it if you want a dose uh, of heroism. Check it out.
Awesome.
Excellent. I think that's exactly the answer that Herb was looking for there.
Yeah, I've seen clips of Supernatural. I have to say, just a little bit of it, and I do like how you approach your role as Lucifer, and yeah, you've got kind of a real mischievous sort of quality to it. So that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's probably the later versions of Lucifer, where they wrote more comedic elements to him, and I actually sort of like that because I think you should make fun of evil, and so there was a bit of a wink, wink, nod, nod to making fun of Lucifer throughout the latter part of the seasons. The first appearance of Lucifer, however, he was a villain extraordinaire. He was a pretty frightening guy, and the humor was very subtle. It was an undercurrent of casualness throughout this evil that made some of the things he said and did very funny. But he was formidable. He was formidable in season 5. Watch that, and you see a man on a mission.
Yeah, I like how humor can make things extra menacing.
Hey, so if we watch Supernatural and we stream it, do you get royalties?
I believe I do. I haven't been keeping track of what's going on with the negotiations with SAG. I just know
we'll try to get you all the new viewers we can, and whether that affects the royalty stream or not. Quick question from Lou. Lou says, Mark, did you do any commercials?
I did one commercial, and that was because my friend's husband owned a commercial production company. And so they were doing a commercial for Zima beer right after the earthquake.
Zima.
The LA earthquake. Yeah, Zima. Good old Zima. Whatever happened to Zima? Well, I think I broke it with my commercial. I went bankrupt soon after. We were filming in a sort of a basement pool hall in Old Town Pasadena with tremors, aftershocks still hitting periodically through the shoot. So it was a little scary because I didn't know it was going to happen. One aftershock could be 7.0 and take the whole building down. So it was a little freaky. But that was my only commercial, Zima beer.
Yeah, well, glad you're still with us, and too bad for Zima.
I know. It was a good beer.
Yeah.
It tasted like Fresca. You remember Fresca? Or remember Fresca? Is Fresca still around?
I don't know.
I don't know. Maybe in Mexico or something.
I'm old enough to know it, but I don't know if it's still on the shelves.
Did it go the way of Tab? Is Tab still around? Remember Tab?
Yes.
Wasn't that like the first diet soda?
It was the very first diet soda.
I think that went away and it came back.
Yeah.
And these days everything comes back because retro sells.
Right.
I see stuff on the shelves and I'm perplexed that it's still out there. Who is drinking that?
Yeah.
Favorite part about being an actor?
Favorite part about being an actor?
Yes, favorite thing about being an actor.
Well, you get to play, get to play dress up for the rest of your life. It's that's my favorite part about it. And I have to say, there's that part of me that loves doing stuff, and there's absolutely no consequence to the stuff that I do. I can take down the entire universe as Lucifer. I can indulge my punk nihilist fantasies if I want to, and nothing's going to actually happen. It's great. It's a great outlet for inappropriate feelings like that.
That's definitely one of my takeaways from this conversation.
Also, I could be a doctor. I could be the president of the United States. I could be a pilot. I could be an astronaut. I could be a dreamer, artist. I could be the devil, right? Yes. I could be anything I want to be. Yeah, without all the schooling and work.
Well, when I say that, I don't mean it tongue in cheek. I really admire not just your talent, but your ability to step into a role. Having been in management, for example, we would use role play training to employees. I hate role play, and yet I admire people who can do it, who can let loose and play another character, and in your case, do it especially well. James Valiant has a question. He is in the chat and says,
Hey,
"How
James.
does philosophy?" Oh, sorry, I got to pop out the chat because the reactions field in YouTube is naturally screwing that. Here we go. How does philosophy help as an actor? Or does it? Or does it is a great question, because I know there are some challenges perhaps being more philosophically astute than the people you're working with.
It helps. It helps with clarity. It helps. I think it helps script interpretation. It helps you understand the values you're going for. And I think of an actor as a passionate valuer. And the more strongly you understand what it is you value in a scene, I think the more strongly you can go for it. I don't even know if is that. Can you say more strongly? That's weird. But yeah, I think it sort of gives you a little steroid shot of values and evaluation. It makes you a clearer thinker and a clearer feeler.
Mm-hmm.
And it also makes you less, especially this is objectivism. I don't know if this is with respect to every philosophy, but it makes you less concerned about what the audience is thinking or how they feel about you. You're in it for yourself. You're in it to have the experience of the character, to live that particular life, to pursue those values in that moment. And that's very liberating. Because half of the anxiety that, or I shouldn't say half, maybe 80% of the anxiety that actors feel is the judgment that starts creeping into their own minds with respect to what they think other people are going to think about them. And once you get free of that, you are truly a free person.
I hope the people listening both admire you for that perspective, but are also taking that to heart, because it applies so much to everything. James could just as well have said, "How does philosophy help as any given profession?" And that additional focus, that functioning with purpose and clarity, absolutely essential. We got a bit of inside baseball in the questions here. Maybe you can guess who this is. The question is, "Hi, Dad. Are there any updates?" I don't know what she's referring to here. This is obviously Kiana. "Are there any updates you could say about how the Guardian docu-series is going? Is there a documentary that is on the horizon?
Yeah,
Something that might happen?"
So we did a crowdfunding thing for the Guardian project, which we originally envisioned as a television series, sort of like Catfish meets To Catch a Predator. We brought a director, producer in who gave us another vision that was very good. We decided now to make it into a documentary with the hopes of turning that into a series at some point. So now he just sold his comedy series to a bunch of distribution streaming companies, and he has all kinds of connections now with some great streaming companies that are interested in content, and this is one of the things that we're trying to get produced at one of these streaming places, whether it's going to be Prime or some offshoot of that. So right now it's about refunding, getting some more funding, because we need about $100,000 or so more dollars to finish the project, and to edit it, do all the posts on it. It's going to cost about that. So that's still in the works, Kiana. Thanks for asking. We're still working at getting it funded.
Can you explain more about the Guardian Project and what it is?
Yeah, so as anybody who follows me knows, I oftentimes stick my foot into the deadly swamp of internet bullying. When I see bullying online, I tend to step in the middle of between the bully and the person that they're bullying, the victim, and inserting yourself into that argument, even though it's out of goodwill, gets you into a lot of trouble, because the trolls come out to play. Then they smell blood in the water. It doesn't discourage them. It encourages them to do bad things. And so I became a victim of a lot of internet trolling. And these are sort of rodeo counselors, right before the Me Too movement, before the cancel culture really took up steam. These guys were trying to get me canceled from my shows and from my cons, and they would pass on lies about me.
Wow.
and these lies would go viral. And I got a reputation for being a racist, sexist, transphobic jagoff, none of which I am. Uh, and I decided that these people needed to be fought. So at first, I went to an attorney to try to see if I could sue some of these folks because they were lying. And it's almost impossible to sue somebody for libel here in the state of California. And me and an attorney named Drew Rossow got together, who he had similar bullying experiences growing up, and we decided to make an organization that would it would be a multi-leveled organization where we would have an entertainment section like the docu-series. It would have a legal section for people who were the victims of this kind of internet violence, so that they could actually seek remuneration for what happened to them, because some people's lives are absolutely devastated, and some form of section for for psychology, where we'd integrate help for them so that they could get services, psychological services for what they've suffered. And so we got funding for the show portion of that. We got about $20,000 of funding. It was the trolls tried to shut that down. They accused me of coming in with the last $6,000 to put it over the top. They did everything they could to crush that project because they thought I was going to use it against them. I don't think of them at all, so I wasn't planning on doing that because they occupy zero space in my mind. But I did want to help other people who don't have the fan base or the following, who knows them or believes in them and can help them through times like that, who just feel absolutely alone and are cornered by these people and destroyed.
That is a fantastic project.
Yeah, that is downright heroic.
Yes.
Well, thank you for that. And
but so you can find out more on on a Kickstarter page kind of thing if you look
up.
Well,
no, we don't have the Kickstarter page anymore. We did have domains and websites open, but I don't know that we have those right now. We might have to change the name of the project. Still working on that with Brian. We have to decide exactly which way we're going to go with it when we get the money coming in.
All right. Well, gosh, best of luck with that.
Yeah, we are as eager as our questioners here to hear more about how that one goes. Outstanding. It's interesting. I was listening to, you did an outstanding interview with Michael Leibowitz. For folks who don't know the Rational Egoist podcast, just look up Mark and you'll find that interview on there. And the two of you talked a bit about the book exchange that you did with a friend, and you recommended the books The Fountainhead and Atlas Shrugged to a friend of yours. And it's knowing that The Fountainhead has had a big impact on you. I know there's a conversation to be had about, I want to be more like Howard Roark, but I don't know if I can live up to that ideal. And you made the point, well, eventually you realize, no, you don't want to be Howard Roark. You want to be your version of Howard Roark, your idea of the ideal, which I thought was really powerful stuff. And so hearing you talk about these trolls almost seems like too nice a word. That perspective is one of my favorite things about The Fountainhead, is but I don't think of you. I'll give you as much focus as I need to fight you, and then I'm just going to let that go. You're not going to matter that much. So I really admire both your willingness to do this project, but also your perspective on that, which is powerful stuff. And folks, if you don't already have that sense of, I can fight evil, but I don't have to think about it all day, there's a lesson there for you. Outstanding. Which leads me to the question, who are your heroes? Now, it's all too easy to say, well, obviously, I can pull them from fiction, Howard Roark or John Galt. But I think you probably have a richer answer than that for us, knowing some of your interests there.
Well, I mean, Ayn Rand is certainly a hero of mine. I think she was a giant and should be counted along with the founding fathers as a second founder. I think you had the founders who are my great heroes. Frederick Douglass was a great hero of mine. I think he advanced the American dream that much further and should be accounted as a founder, in a sense, a co-founder. because he made America stick to its premises. He held them to their moral accountability. He took the principles that the founders gave us seriously and wrote very eloquently about the American spirit. And he was just a giant. When you read his autobiography, and you find that he actually went back to his original slave master and sat by his bedside while he died, and that there was a form of closure with him for doing that. He was just he lived on a scale that's I admire and hope to one day achieve in my own way. Of course, the founders to me are heroes, and they don't get a lot of positive play nowadays. In fact, they're downright vilified for the most part. They don't deserve that, but right. Then again, we live in an irrational society now, so that falls on deaf ears unless I'm talking to folks like you. In acting, acting heroes get a little bit sketchy, because I could love the way actors work and see their genius in their process, and pretty much hate everything else about them, right?
Well, we might have to go with more favorites than heroes when it comes to acting. Do you have favorites, strong favorites?
I mean, Brando really influenced me quite a bit. He was the only actor to make it in the 100 most influential people of Time Life magazine of the century, and he did literally change the face of acting. It wasn't just the Moscow Art Theater teachers and their extension in the group theater, and all the actors and directors and producers that came out of that. It was Marlon who brought this dynamic, internalized way of acting to the world, and he had no. He just broke stereotypes left and right, and it had to take a lot of courage to do that at the time that he did it. Although I don't think he was aware of that. I just think he was being himself, and he made actors aspire to being real and intuitive and honest, but with a heightened poetry to their living. And he probably got that from Stella Adler. Stella Adler, as disgusting a person as she was in many ways, she had a vision of acting that was very objectivist-esque. It was grand, and the actor should have size. The actor should be a giant in many ways, and the actor should be a giant. Yeah, I mean, some of my heroes are the inventors. Ibsen is a hero of mine, the playwright Heinrich Ibsen, who I'm going to be doing a reading of Enemy of the People pretty soon. Because he was an individualist in the late 19th century, in a place where that was probably political suicide. He thought his own thoughts, and went his own way, and I think that took tremendous courage at the time that he did that. So I love him for that. And I could go through a list of inventors and entrepreneurs, I think, who cut against the grain and pursued their dream despite all the odds that were against them, and we'd probably have a lot in common in that respect. But why do that? It would be a list that I think is old for us. But who are you guys as heroes? Any current ones?
Yeah, the ones you've mentioned. I mean, I'm glad you mentioned Frederick Douglass, because both his heroism, but more than his wisdom. You mentioned that he originally went back to the man who was his slaveholder. He went back to the founding fathers. He released his essay, "What to the Slave is the 4th of July." What does this Day of Independence mean to those of us who are enslaved? And he could see past the concretes of the situation to see these are the principles that are going to emancipate us. Yeah. These are the principles we are fighting for. Extraordinary.
And imagine having the courage to stand up in front of a predominantly white audience at a time when there was deep segregation and the culture was racialized probably more intensely than today, although that's difficult to imagine. But there were laws against black people, and he himself was a fugitive slave. So, I
Yeah.
mean, in a potentially hostile audience, to castigate them, to morally read them the riot act for their inability to live up to the promise of the Fourth of July, that takes cojones the size of Wisconsin. And I
Yes.
love a guy like that. That is the embodiment to me of Ibsen's hero in Enemy of the People, where he says, the hero says in the very last line, the strongest man in the world is he who stands most alone. That is that was a troubling comment to me when I was in my 20s, but now I get it in a way that, and I think it's because I've experienced how insane the mob is, and how insane our culture is, and how truth really bubbles out of this insanity from one or two people who have the courage to stand up in the face of it all and say, "Hey, fuck you. This is the reality."
Yeah.
And you can scream, you can threaten violence all you want. It's not going to change the reality. And so you gotta love a guy who does that.
Yes.
My
Yes.
hero.
If anybody is speaking of Enemy of the People, if anybody is not aware, and if you're anywhere near Austin in month of December, mid-December, there's a link on my Facebook wall. We'll add it to the YouTube description as well for Mark's reading of An Enemy of the People as part of Austin Shakespeare. It makes me want to get on a plane and go see it. I don't know if we can make that happen, but if you can, it's something you absolutely should do.
Yes. Yeah, I was just going to mention that. So we have some things in common. So, the idea of that moral courage or moral fire that Frederick Douglass has, that steely courage that he had and he showed, and he was an orator, and he went, like you said, he went up in front of so many people, so many white people, so many people who were against him, and he spoke, and he was a great orator. And it just reminds me of, when you asked who are your heroes, I have two heroes other than Ayn Rand, and they're all three are women, of course. Ayn Rand was a woman. So for my very first hero was Debbie Allen of Fame, the dancer.
Yeah, okay.
And her portrayal in the TV shows and the movie.
Okay.
And then the second one is Harriet Tubman, who I did a book report on.
Wow.
And when I was 9. So those have carried me over throughout my life. Dancing and moral fire.
Hey, and you can't read Rose Wilder Lane without really being inspired by her and her voice at a time when, one, women weren't really speaking out powerfully at all, but she was such a strident voice for liberty and independent thinking at a time when it was not fashionable. You gotta love her. She's one of my heroes too.
Yeah, and like Frederick Douglass, it would have been all too easy to say, freedom, liberty, capitalism, I'm a victim of all of that because my rights aren't being recognized. And she understood if there's going to be liberty, if there's going to be freedom, that will be the emancipation of women. Mm-hmm. And I think of that because, as you're suggesting nowadays, when we look at the individual hero, when you were younger, they were telling you the individual, oh yeah, that's the loner, or that's the narcissist, that's the hedonist. The loner, it's such a wrong description. No, what we want is the independent man. We want the man who thinks for himself and acts accordingly. But let me jump to a couple of quick questions here from the chat. Catherine wants to know if there's a date for release date for American Rust. Is that season 1 coming out on
Season
DVDs aren't
1
really a thing anymore. It's already on streaming, right?
Season 1 is already out. Season 2, I think, is going to start in December. I'm not sure exactly when.
Streaming in December? I didn't realize it was that far along.
Should on it. Yeah, we already finished it. We finished it, and they were about, I want to say, halfway through post-production when the strikes hit. So I haven't gotten any phone calls from them, so I'm assuming post-production is finished, and they're going to be streaming that in December.
Okay.
Not sure when the exact date is. and I think we're going to find out if there's a season 3 by the 4th of December. So before I go to Austin, I should know whether I'm going back to Pittsburgh.
And that'll be Amazon will be still be picking that up.
It's Freevee, as far as I know.
Amazon
Okay.
Freevee.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Don't quite know what to make of this comment. You tell me if there's a question in here. We all love Lucy. Of course, Luci. We're talking about Lucifer here. From Teresa, she says, when Mark says he's the real Lucifer or a real life Lucifer, what does he mean by that? Have you said something like that? And are we talking?
I do.
Are
It's
we
in
talking?
my. It's in.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
It's in like one of my profiles on one of my
Okay.
social media. The real life Lucifer.
So what does that mean to you?
It means the original rebel against arbitrary authority. So Lucifer was the guy who stood up against the people who said he has to do things their way. He has to obey, and Lucifer
Right.
said, "I will not." He was the one who stood up against a god who said, "You have to serve a lesser being than you." He said, "I will not." That took balls,
Yeah.
and so as far as I'm concerned, Lucifer is the hero, the real hero of the story. And I tried to sort of inch towards that in Supernatural. There's only so much I could do because I'm reading somebody else's material, but they played with some of that unconventional way of looking at Lucifer,
Good.
especially in season 5. He was definitely jilted. He had a just cause that he was fighting for, and you could see it. You could see he made his case for himself. And one of the great things I love about him in season 5 especially is he says to Sam, "I will never lie to you." He says it to my character when I'm Nick. He comes to me in the form of my wife. He says, "I'll never lie to you. I'll tell you, I will always tell you the truth." I love that about him. That's the true light bringer. He never lied.
Yes.
He never lied, and he pursued what he thought was right, which in that show was revenge against a very bad god.
It makes perfect sense.
Yeah.
Without an origin story, none of it would make
And it
any
reminds
sense.
me of it reminds me of the story of Milton's Paradise Lost, who kind of brought a humanist perspective to the idea of Lucifer. And when I first read that when I was a teenager, I thought, oh, he's trying to basically gather other archangels together to form a democracy so that they can kind of vote on what's going on in heaven and the universe.
Hey man, yeah, there's that, and we wouldn't have moral reasoning if it weren't for him. So
Yes.
we
Yes.
are human to the degree that we went for that apple. We were tempted by him. He said, it's good for you to know the difference between right and wrong and good and evil. This is good for you, and when you know that, I think God was afraid that we'd find the secret to eternal life, which, hey, I'm all for that as a human being. Love that longevity project.
Yes.
What could be wrong with that? We've got a complicated question in the chat. I'm not necessarily looking for you to answer it, but I'm going to read it just because it relates to a project that I'm working on that you and I have mentioned briefly. Manu in the chat says, do you think that accepting the objectivist theory of emotions could be psychologically dangerous due to the fact that it doesn't address the complexities of human emotion, for example, depression or trauma? Now, you might remember that I mentioned at one point, I think we need, because the reason I mentioned wisdom in the context of Frederick Douglass, I think we need to be able to offer what the Stoics or the Buddhists or the Jordan Petersons of the world offer.
Yeah.
In terms of certain wisdoms that help us deal with the hard parts of life, and people looking for catharsis or dealing with grief, dealing with the fact that the longevity project hasn't got us less than mortal yet. We're all memento mori, going to die someday. So I appreciate, even though I kind of disagree with the premise behind Manu Valente's question there, I appreciate the question because I think there is wisdom in objectivism. And there's room for us to bring more of it out. Do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah, I think a lot of objectivists misunderstand our take on emotions. See, emotions are a primary in the world today. So people can, when Rand says they're not tools of cognition, she doesn't mean they're not valuable and that you should repress them. They are certainly tools to understanding your inner life and what you value. They're very important, and you shouldn't deny them. You should try to understand where they're coming from. And in some cases, they can be an instantaneous evaluation of what's going on if you're wired right. Many of us aren't, and so our feelings should be processed through our reasoning mind before we do anything about it, if that's possible. So a lot of people will use her take on emotions to repress feelings, but repression is not healthy and repression is not good. And I know she wasn't for repression at all. Don't suppress your feel. Don't repress your feelings. Understand where they're coming from, particularly if they're negative. If you're chronically depressed, that should definitely be a signal to you that you should probably see a doctor and find out what your body chemistry is like. See if there's something within your body chemistry that you need to work on. And if it's situational depression, figure out why you're not coping appropriately with the stuff that's happening in your world. A lot of times you'll find that your values are out of place. You've hardwired values into your system that are not pro-life. And that takes a lot of work to distill those bad values out of your system and replace them with good ones. It's not easy. That's why I think the Jordan Petersons of the world make a lot of headway, because they acknowledge this painful part of human existence. Objectivists tend to say pain isn't important, living is important. Again, that's not a denial of the fact that pain happens, or that you experience psychological pain. Of course you do. But what the Petersons of the world do is they give you the quick solution of religion and as a pansement, as a band-aid, and it's a quick fix for people. And Stoicism, for example, a quick fix, a kind of emotional triage that gives them a temporary sense of relief that they then extrapolate to being an answer for their lives, and it's really not. It's a balm. It can in some respects be helpful. I think some stoical ideas can get you over emotional hurdles for the moment, but I don't think they are long-term fixes for whatever ails you. For that, you need real philosophy and real interior work to rewire the stuff that's malwired from your childhood. I mean, look, we're as human beings, we experience our sense of life is laid from a very early part of our development into us, right? Into our bones, it feels like. And you've drawn conclusions about life before you were able to form concepts based on your physical experiences with the stuff around you. And it takes a lot of work to undo that stuff that's at a preconceptual level. You can do it. You certainly can, but you got to work at it. So for me, philosophy is the way out of those kinds of holes. You can certainly dig yourself out of holes that your upbringing, and after a while you participate in digging for yourself, if you're thinking right, and if you know what acting for your life actually means, then the temporary pauses in your happiness or eudaimonia or a sense of groundedness or contentment, they won't frighten you or put you off. They just are what they are, and you know what your job is. Your job is to work through them and sort out how to best deal with that phenomenon. In a way that prospers you.
Introspection, and objectivists talk about introspection quite a bit, and we actually have quite a few different psychologists, in the community, and writing books and doing projects and things like that.
Psychology has been running parallel with objectivism since the beginning.
Yeah, and
organized
it has,
objectivism.
But it gets short shrift though. I mean, because in many ways, objectivists acknowledge that psychology is really behind the times as a science. Yeah. They went in a mystic direction. They didn't. They went in an entirely different direction than where they should have gone, with the exception of cognitive behavioral therapy.
Yes,
I think.
I was going to mention that.
Yeah, where you're literally changing your thoughts and figuring out the source of your feelings so that you can be a productive person. And productive doesn't mean of use to anybody else, but value seeking, productive, looking to be happy, like
Yeah.
any person. Yeah.
Yeah, and I see a lot of people who are not involved, who are not really working on themselves. When they give an opinion, they'll start off with I feel, and then they'll state whatever opinion it is that may be rehashed, maybe undigested. They haven't really thought about it. And now psychology will give them a vocabulary for their thoughts, their inner processes. It'll touch on epistemology, things like that. Philosophy, though, will help give you what ought to be. It'll give you a guide. It'll give you a perspective of a proper relationship as a human being to how you're living in existence, how you're living on Earth. So yeah, you definitely need the psychology. You definitely need the processes. And honestly, I think that Ayn Rand, via Nathaniel Branden and others, Edith Packer and a number of others, and then going through cognitive behavioral therapy, I think Ayn Rand has been an influence on cognitive behavioral therapy. And the work of Ellen Kenner and Ed Locke and now Gina Gorlin, and so yeah, you can't take that one part of emotions are not tools of cognition, so you should ignore them. That's not it at all. Emotions are a wonderful thing to have. It's a wonderful thing to have an emotional mechanism. It'll give you little pointers and little road signs to question what your values and thoughts and experiences are, and to introspect. Without that pain, you're not going to know that you're on the wrong path. If you are, you're not going to know where you are. And in terms of Jordan Peterson and these new approaches to psychology, the idea of mitigating suffering or alleviating suffering as the ultimate purpose of a philosophy or a religion is just that makes my blood boil, because you're not leaving any room for happiness. You're not leaving any choice to actually pursue values. And it's painful to listen to them talking about mitigating pain.
That's all life is for them. That's the metaphysical reality for them, is pain. And people, I think the more hardwired people are to being neurotic and narcissistic, that is their experience. Their experience is predominantly pain, predominantly dissatisfaction, predominantly frustration. And the further they get away from reality and from a way of dealing with reality and a way of dealing with themselves, the more pain they're going to experience. It's a terrible cycle that people like Jordan Peterson don't help with in the long run.
It rings in my ears, Ayn Rand's words. It's a ball and chain where their wings should have grown. It's from one of her quotes. I don't know if it's from the Comper Chicos, but I forget. But yeah, I just want to shake people and say, there's more to life than what you're selling, what you're offering, what you're mulling in.
Yeah. As I say, there's a project going on my computer. As far as the Stoics do offer something that we are not stating the way we need to. I won't say it's not in objectivism, but the Stoics, the Buddhists, the Jordan Petersons, there's something there. And
there are questions to be answered.
Yeah, I have to get a big charge out of the book discussion that you had with Michael, because you mentioned one of my favorite books, which I'm hesitant to ever recommend to anybody, but Illusions, The Adventures of a Reluctant Messiah by Richard Bach.
Yeah.
Enormously empowering if you take it as a fantasy, if you take it as a story. You just need reminders that, well, the only person stopping you from doing anything is yourself. Now, they make it metaphysical and suggest, well, if you just believe you can literally do anything. But yeah, I found the book very empowering because I understood it at the level of, the vast majority of our limitations are self-imposed. And,
I mean, he takes those limitations to be, the wall is solid because you believe it's solid. So don't go that far. But yeah, if you're looking at it as a sort of liberation narrative, where I put limits on myself. One of the most interesting things that the Messiah says, he starts playing the guitar, and I think this is in, it's not, that's not in Way of the Peaceful Warrior, it's in Illusions, I think. And the character says, what? Have you played before? No, I haven't. And practice is just a way of giving yourself permission to do what you already know. And that sort of, that idea that, wow, yeah, if I just get out of my own way, a lot of times I can go a lot further than I ever, than my self-imposed limits would let me. If I just get out of my way and say, sure, I could do this, why not? I give myself permission.
Right.
There is something to that.
I found it extremely powerful, but again, I didn't take it with all the metaphysical woo.
You didn't take it with the primacy of consciousness, or you didn't take that.
But
Unfortunately,
again,
unfortunately, that's the way he meant it. But
yeah,
you could take it. You could take it as a great metaphor for
I'm going to
letting
guess
go of
that
your limitations.
I'm going to guess he kept putting fuel in his airplanes. He didn't find himself, 14,000 feet up there without any gas. Even though he claims, and unfortunately drew large crowds, kind of like the Messiah, who believed that he was being literal, he knew better. On some level, he knew better, and that's how, whether he did or not, it's how I took it. I found it very valuable, and I want to be able to pluck those kind of gems out of, and then see, well, where is that in objectivism? Because it is in there. But we get folks who say, oh yeah, objectivism kind of represses your emotions. Oh, for Christ's sake, we're all about happiness. How can you say that? But at the same time, I do get it.
And Robert and I, we've done shows on this channel about crying and how wonderful it is.
Well, yeah. if nothing makes you cry, then you also have no passion.
Yeah, in the right context. There are certain contexts in which crying is amazing, and showing emotion and being vulnerable and all of that is amazing. It's an amazing life experience, and you should not deny yourself of it.
And one of the great wisdom quotes from Atlas Shrugged: "The only man never to be redeemed is the man without passion."
Yeah.
Ayn Rand said that?
Yes.
It makes sense if you understand that reason, purpose, self-esteem lead to happiness, to actually enjoying your life. Although Richard Bach did another great Richard Bach quote: "Your conscience." Well, that's a kind of metaphysical emotion. Your conscience is the measure of the honesty of your selfishness. Listen to it carefully.
I like that.
Yeah. So good stuff. So anyway, I got a big charge out of you bringing that up because I got a lot out of
Robert's
that book.
favorite.
Well, that's good. I thought I'd be, I'm going to say this jokingly. I don't mean it seriously, but I thought I would be excommunicated. But no, see, folks, objectivists aren't, rigid. We take in these books that seem to be in opposition to objectivism, and we can find value in them.
If anybody should be able to find what's good in there and take those bits out, it should be us.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, for sure.
That's one thing. One thing that's wonderful about objectivism is for me personally, is that I get to have all the vocabulary to understand everything in the world.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a blessing, sometimes the curse, but I have the vocabulary, and of course there's new things to discover. There's new questions to answer, a lot of nuances and such. But the thing is that the universe is understandable. It's one of the ideas in objectivism that I absolutely love that Ayn Rand put forth.
So here's a question I already know the answer to, but I'm going to let you answer it. Lou asks, what's happening with the American Capitalist Party? And my understanding is essentially it's a platform, and it's ready whenever America's ready for it.
That's it. That's it. It's a platform. It's there for anybody who's ready to take up the banner in their local election, regional election, state election, even national election, and do the hard work that you'll have to do to get yourself on the ballot. I simply don't have the time. It would be a full-time job and then some to actually devote to building the party from the ground up, fighting the duopoly to get somebody on the ballot. It's not my forte. It's not my interest. Politics, as much as I love politics, talking about politics, I love the philosophy and ethics behind politics. It's such a dirty field now that I don't want to have to get my feet and hands dirty but I know somebody out there will want to. And so it's there to pick up and carry across the finish line. If I have to, maybe I will. But for now, that's not in the cards. Anybody?
I could have run for office, but I chose not to, and I was part of the Republican Party before Trump.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was a state committee woman and delegate, and I was on the Liberty Caucus, and those were interesting times.
Katrine wants to know, what will the next reality check be about? Folks, if you haven't checked out the reality check videos,
It's good.
look up Mark Pellegrino, the reality
Very,
check.
very good.
We'll
Yeah.
put a link out there as well.
You're
They've
able
been
to
outstanding.
concisely deal with issues in basically layman's language within like 6 minutes. It's
And I've got to
great.
say, whoever your editor, your producer, whoever does your videos for you, really nice work on that.
Oh, good. Thank you. Yeah, the next one's going to be on Israel. It's in the editing bay now, so I just have to send a script to the editor with my suggestions for cuts, and then hopefully in the next couple days I could put that puppy out and disturb some pro-Palestinian protesters.
Good.
It warms my heart to disturb pro-Palestinian protesters.
It warms the cockles of my heart to fuck with their day.
It's you know, it's in the nature of the beast, obviously, that they're the ones shouting and screaming and making the most noise.
I feel this, I feel that. Oh, you
I
feel
look at the protests.
genocide.
I look at the anti-Semitism protests in Paris
Yeah.
and in the Washington, D.C., and now we just had one in London. And you watch these protests, and it's almost like a celebration. Because they know more than just what they're fighting. They know what they're fighting for. And these are civilized, reasonable, passionate, but not crazy people.
Yes.
And just videos of the crowds versus the so-called pro-Palestinian protesters should be all the difference in the world. So we will look forward to that next episode of the Reality Check. Thank you for
Good.
that.
And okay, how are we on time? I just want to be careful.
Yes, we need to
How much-
respect your schedule because
Yeah.
we didn't
good.
talk in advance.
You're
but
good? Okay, a little bit
Yeah.
more? Good.
Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go a little
Thank
longer
you.
then because the chat is very busy here.
And I'm looking at my list of questions
And
and,
you've
I'm
got
like,
a list of questions that we haven't even gotten to yet, including fun ones. I've got to make sure we get a couple of Amy's funner questions out here. For example, do you have a favorite Ayn Rand character or scene? And if you could act it out, what would be the scene you would want to act out?
I mean, I like when Hank first meets Ragnar Daniscold. That's one of my favorite scenes. It's very ominous and awesome, and the things he says are awesome. It gives me the chills right now,
Yeah,
just thinking about it.
the way Hank denounces him, and yet he's hearing everything he needs to hear.
and then the police officer comes and
Oh,
and he says nothing.
It's great. Yeah, it's great. Yeah, that's a great scene. You know, and that would be one that I would love to do. I think I'm a little too old for Ragnar, though.
Not necessarily.
All right, I could be an older Ragnar.
shave, makeup. You could be whoever you want to be.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
obviously a great Hank, too.
Yeah. Any other? Well, yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm looking over Amy's questions here and trying to think which ones do we not want to miss. Maybe I should let you do that.
I don't know. I mean, I don't know. It's all. We may have you on again and just go
But
through
just-
the rest because.
Well, she's got going back a little bit. Do you remember the first time you were starting to think philosophically? Was it with books like Richard Bach or that kind of thing that got you in a philosophical frame of mind?
So I had a friend who lived down the street. We're still friends to this day. We've known each other since the second grade. He
Nice.
moved into his mother's house. She moved to Florida, and he now owns that house. But we would walk around the block for hours, he and I, and just talk about stuff that I would classify now as philosophy. I'd look around at the houses and I'm look how we were probably 12, and I'd say, look at how we're surrounded by the mind. That's what I would say by the houses. You know, we were
Wow.
seeing we were seeing the constructions of people's minds, and I'd say that we're surrounded by the mind. And this, we weren't stoned. We were too young to be stoned or anything like that. This was just talk of two kids. He was, he was a really inventive guy. He invents stuff. I mean, he works for the DWP, but he goes home and he invents things. That's just sort of what he does. So he builds cars from the ground up. He's that guy. So he had a very practical take on the world, and we would just talk for hours, walk around the block and talk for hours about stuff like that. So I felt like I've always had the philosophy bug in me. And when I was in college, I took a an ethics class, philosophy class that everyone failed except for me. I got an A in the class. I loved it because I had to write journals. I did an art journal. So I was drawing at the time. So I'd draw and I'd write big essays, and I thought the teacher was interesting. And so I think I've always been sort of bent in this way. Rand gave me, more focus, what the right types of questions were, what types of questions I should be asking and answering. And, and she helped me to think. She sort of provided an epistemological framework for me.
Yeah, you were already ready. If you're a teenager, 12, 13 years old, looking at big houses and saying the creativity and the to create that and make that happen, and then to be productive enough to afford it and see that as a good thing and not jealous or envious or shrug it off.
Yeah. So so this was my question: is that so it sounds like you were just kind of exploring the world, and you weren't necessarily. One of the things that when I was very young, this kind of manifested in my favorites. What are my favorites? Or, I would say things to my mom. I would barely talk, and when I did, it was like really amazing. And I would say when I was 4 to my mom, I said, "Mom, I like men better than I like women." And there was real substance to that. It wasn't just, I like how they look or whatever. And I could explain it now in more detail. I said, "Mom, black women are the most beautiful women on earth." 4 years old. Like, where did I get this? Of course, I got that from my hero, Debbie Allen. And so when I just started getting more into philosophy myself, when I was 13-ish, it was kind of more in the form of, let's try to find the hypocrisy of the world and point that out so that we can problem solve.
Oh, so this gets us into the topic, because it's been asked about in the chat. Lou says, we were promised punk. And I did mention punk rock music in some of the notes leading up to this. So, favorite band or bands, punk rock, and do you have a favorite song or lyric or theme that kind of music or had an impact on you? Something that comes to mind.
So my favorite band is my first punk love, which is the Germs.
The Germs.
Yeah.
And it's my favorite album. That's my favorite album is GI. And Richie Dagger's Crime is my favorite song. So it's like, that was my introduction to punk, and it never left me, I'm Richie Dagger, I can stomp and swagger, I can take on all you hear, whoa, whoa, whoas. I love that, man.
It's great. The
He was
faster,
a great
the better.
lyricist.
Yeah, he was a great lyricist.
He was a great lyricist, Lexicon Devil is one of my favorite songs. I mean, can I still remember the lyrics? I'm a lexicon devil with a battered brain, searching for a future. The world's my aim, so give me your hands, give me your mind, give me your hands, give me your, give me this, give me that, yeah. He's his lyrics are great. That was about Hitler, of course, totally appropriate for today, and the lexicon devils that occupy Washington, Sacramento, and every other capital around the world.
Yes.
Listen to that song for a poetic rendition of how crummy those folks are. But he was great, and that was my favorite band. I listened to Black Flag as well.
Yep.
Although I wasn't a skinhead and I didn't buy into their full-on anarchy stuff, but I have to tell you, I mean, I love Nervous Breakdown. Six Pack, Revenge album is good,
and I love TV Party because it's so light and nice.
Okay, there you go.
Just silly.
Revenge is a really, really tough song. I mean, the germs, it's like there's poetry and lyricism to what they're saying, even though Darby Crash's voice is really bad. He's such a good writer.
Yeah.
You don't get that with Black Flag. I mean, revenge, I'll watch you bleed, revenge. That's all I need. I won't care if you die. I mean, all right, for a 15-year-old, I guess it expressed my angst and anger at the world, on some level, but
One thing I was fascinated for myself about punk rock, because you're speaking my language, was that I really was drawn to satire. Satire as a form of changing people's minds, of taking ideas to the extreme, examining the ideas, really, really trying to understand, what is right morally and what's wrong morally. And there was so much of that when I was growing up in listening to punk rock. It wasn't just so much about the hypocrisy. It was also, I was trying to figure out what life was about. And so thankfully I discovered Ayn Rand when I was only 16. That saved me a lot of hell. That was, but I started out loving satire, and I still love it.
I mean, I think my way into punk rock was a little bit more negative than that. I mean, that's a much more intelligent way of looking at it. I mean, I was sort of that, like, fuck it all kind of thing. Not quite as extreme as my friends who went full on into punk rock.
Yeah.
But it was a rebellion against pretty much everything, including conventional music. And it was for the people who didn't quite fit into any particular crowd, right? So they were saying fuck you to all the crowds in a way and making their own way. So I went at it from that angle, so it's probably not as constructive as yours. But
well, I mean, if you had discovered Minor Threat at that time, that's East Coast, Washington, D.C., hardcore punk rock. Maybe you've been a little bit more turned on to that perspective.
Well,
they're a lot more intellectual.
And the other thing is, at that age, we had to be taught to say no, and punk rock was a part of that.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, punk rock really rebelled against the dominant culture, the hippie culture. I mean, it went all the way in the wrong direction, but in a way it was like, I'm not going to do you. I'm not going to do your youth culture. I'm not going to go that way.
Yeah.
And I'm going to say, it was a big middle finger to that. And there's something strong and independent about that. There's something kind of cool about it. And now, if just many of these punk rockers are becoming sort of cool in their middle age and their later years, they're totally rock and roll. They're totally hip to the liberty movement, and they're rebels. I mean, who would have thought that they would be like, I don't know, heroes for us in some respects, for this kind of movement, right? You know what I mean? But I think guys like Johnny Rotten are coming out and they're like rebelling against.
Johnny Lydon is really interesting to listen to, his perspectives and his interviews. He's really amazing. I mean, and Henry Rollins also can be pretty good in his spoken word.
So I hear. I've never really heard his spoken word.
He started out as a Nietzschean existentialist, and what I considered myself to be at the time, when I was really young. But yeah, he's really good. Actually, the Rollins band has a lot of excellent intellectual songs, very good songs. And I sent you that whole list of punk rock bands that you should definitely.
I saw that. Okay, I'll definitely. I think I did get one song. I'll get a couple more and check them out.
Yeah. Jason Adams in the chat says, Rotten makes more sense than Peterson. Does Johnny Rotten make more sense than Jordan Peterson? I don't know. I guess I'm prepared to accept that.
He's more straightforward. Johnny Lydon. He doesn't go by Johnny Rotten anymore. It's Johnny Lydon.
Understood.
But
whatever.
Johnny Lydon.
You can't take that away from me. Now, while we're on the subject, you got in a band once. Are there any video clips out there?
Yeah.
Is there any secret recordings? Anything we might find, or that you're waiting to post?
I think there are pictures somewhere. Video, I don't think so. This was in like 1986. I think video is a big thing there, but I know people took pictures of a show or two of ours. So you see me up there with my long hair, doing our thing. I mean, we got together basically a bunch of friends from high school. We got together and for the sole purpose of playing this thing called the May Festival, which was like a festival in May at this Catholic school, and there were going to be about 2 or 3 thousand people there. And we decided, hey, we're going to play. We're going to be this band to play there. And then we stayed together a little while longer, but then everybody went to school and did
Yeah.
their thing. But they were good. Like the guys were good. They were really good. One of our guys who's now a doctor, MD. He could play every instrument by ear.
Dang.
He played our bass when we needed him to play, guitar. He played that. He could play keys. He could play anything by ear. He could tune instruments by ear.
Wow. Perfect
Crazy.
pitch.
Perfect pitch. He had perfect pitch, which seems like that would be a little torturous, right? If something's a little off,
Yeah.
it grates you a little bit. No, he was a genius, and they were good. A good group of guys. One guy, I think the drummer's a professional drummer now. I think that's what he does.
Do you have any contemporary bands that you like, that you follow?
Contemporary?
Ooh, that's
Yeah.
a tough one for
That's a
anybody
tough one.
over the age of 40. That's always a tough question.
Yeah, because I mean, mostly I listen to old rock and roll. I hate to say, I mostly listen to classic rock. Um, you know, yeah. So I don't even know what contemporary really is. I mean, so
Is some
Yeah,
we
you're
have a couple of
Throwing a stumper out there.
semi contemporary
like
bands we
who? Who?
There's so Robert, actually, he's the one who finds these bands, and I like them. Is the Joy Formidable? They're a Welsh band from the UK.
How could you go wrong
Okay.
with a band called The Joy Formidable?
Formidable.
Man.
And then also Sleater Kinney, who just released a new album. They're kind of like a Riot Girl kind of Seattle band, but they're pretty cool. As a matter of fact, if you've ever seen Portlandia with the Carrie Brownstein and
Snippets of it.
the guy
I know the show. Yeah, the guy
Yes.
from Saturday Night Live.
Fred Armisen.
Fred Armisen, yeah. So Carrie,
She is the lead guitar player. We got a comment on the Facebook side. Linda Cordier reminds us that Gerald Casale from Devo is a client. A
Yes.
client of what? A client of Quent Cordier Fine Art, folks. If you haven't already gone there, CORDAIR.
oh, I gotta tell you, yeah, Devo. I don't know if you ever got into
CORDAIR.com.
Yeah.
Christmas is right around the corner.
CORDAIR.com. We're talking
Check
over.
out the art. Yeah, I can't afford to
Hey,
buy
I went
a
to a- I went
$1,000
to a-
piece for my kids. Get them the wall calendars. Get them something.
I went to a Devo concert. It was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're great. I mean,
And I was a snob about Devo when I was growing up. When I was into punk, it was like Devo, fuck that.
yeah,
New
new wave bullshit.
Yeah, but in my 20s, like my mid 20s, I went to a concert. They rocked.
Very
We
cool.
got to tell you about Robert's band.
No, we don't.
Yeah, we do.
No. It's out there. It's all out there.
Robert had a song called New Wave Hairstyle, and it was about an ex-girlfriend who broke up with him and then got a new wave hairstyle right after. And he's like, "You got a new wave hairstyle. I don't care what you do."
I was not into that at the time.
And it's funny because it's ironic because now he's married to a punk rocker. So
That's right.
Yeah.
Who would have thought? Everything turns around. I'm just looking through the chat here to make sure we haven't missed any important questions. Gerald Casale, that's cool.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody?
How are your poochies, Frankie and
Frankie and Johnny. Frankie's
yes.
sort of wandering around a little restlessly. That's why you see me looking around, because I just make sure he's.
Frankie and Johnny, are they sweethearts?
They
Is that how
are.
the song goes?
Yes,
Something
it
like
is
that,
how
yeah.
that song goes. Yeah, well, I did a scene from the play Frankie and Johnny. It's one of my favorite plays, by the way. And so when we got Frankie first, and of course once we got a girl dog, she had to be named Johnny, just because.
Perfect.
But he's doing okay. He's just wandering around a little bit. He looks a little lost. He has a little dementia. He was sitting in the chair with me, but now he's just sort of wandering. There, buddy.
yeah. Well, positive, healthy vibes to Frankie. I know.
Thank you.
He's
Well, I
getting
appreciate
up
that you
there.
make your pets and your family part
Yeah.
of your presence. you've shown courage by dealing with, not just the trolls, but the possibility that some people may take offense at what you say, and you're unstoppable. You haven't been stopped. You're not going to be stopped. And, I know one of these days, because I use my real name out on the internet, somebody's going to steal my identity or cause all sorts of hell. And, you have so much more of a presence out there, and yet you're willing to take on the world in so many ways. Folks, if you haven't seen Mark Pellegrino's series of The Reality Check, you need to see it. Of course, on the Ayn Rand Centre-UK channel, Mark is a regular host or co-host, depending on the show, and always does an outstanding job. Of course, most of you already know Mark from Lost, from Supernatural, from American Rust, from a long list on IMDb. Take a look. Yes. Mark, thank you for this conversation. This has been really outstanding, and I want to ask you, do you have, I think Amy phrased it as, do you have a quote or an idea that you discovered that has been an inspiration through your life? Do you have a favorite moral virtue? I just want to ask, do you have some advice that you want to give to the listeners? A great conversation going on in the chat, but as we get close to signing off here, what comes up to mind if there was something you wanted to say to the world on these themes?
Yeah, I mean, I think my favorite virtues are honesty and integrity. I think you're unstoppable if you're honest. You're unstoppable if you have integrity, no matter how crazy the world gets. That's why that quote, the strongest man in the world is he who stands most alone, really, really, really gives me strength today, because the more irrational I see the world, the more I have to stand in truth and use it as my foundation stone, and let the waves of insanity break on me, because that they will break, because reality is stronger.
Yes.
So as formidable as these people can seem, folks, as loud as they scream, they are weak because reality is not on their side. Even if they seem to be temporarily ahead right now, dominant in the culture, rest assured that you have reality on your side, and that makes you extremely powerful. It's like jiu-jitsu. You frame up right, you time yourself right. I don't care how big and strong and spastic that person is on top of you. You sweep them and you get a dominant position with very little strength, because gravity is working for you, because your body structure is working for you, because reality is working for you. And so stay strong. We have a tough fight ahead, guys. We're in a crossroads. The reason I put myself out there is because I sense we are at a crossroads. We could go completely irrational, stagish collectivist, or we could go the other way. And so I want to help tip the scales on the other path. So that's why I put my voice out there.
Beautiful words. Beautiful and true words.
Outstanding advice. Mark, thank you for joining us. Folks, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Cannot say enough how much we appreciate that. 5 Minutes with Robert and Amy Nasir will be back on Sunday, the usual time, 6 p.m. every week, going on and on about what we go on and on about. But this conversation, this is going to be one for the books. And Mark, thank you for your time. I'm looking forward to continuing this discussion on the ARC UK and everywhere else we get to run into each other. It was great running into you when you came in town for the Motor City Comic Con.
Yeah,
Can't thank you enough.
It was great seeing you guys in person. I had so much fun with you guys, even though in this picture I appear to be scowling, and people made a comment about that.
I should have taken more pictures.
That might be my resting bitch face, but I was feeling happy.
You were happy, comfortable, and you were just content. So that's how I took it.
Yeah. Folks, if the pictures don't show it, trust me, a splendid time was had by all, including our special guest, Mark Pellegrino. Thank you for speaking with us tonight.
Thanks, man.